episode 11 of Furiously Eclectic Podcast. I am Dwight, aka Kurse, here on the Furiously Eclectic People Discord, and I am here with
Oh,
and
Dan Cross.
awesome to have you guys. Been looking forward to talking to Dan for a while. Me and Phzoul chat seems like weekly now, almost like it's scheduled.
Yeah, almost like it's planned. It's organized.
Something seems like it's more than just coincidence.
So one of the things I've been thinking about lately, partially because I played Traveler this past Thursday, is if you ever play in a hard sci-fi game, or at least the science fiction type game, does the fact that you don't believe in the technology ever impact the play for you? Start with Phzoul.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think that thought has ever crossed my mind. Yeah, so no. I mean, I'm all in. I lean more towards I like hard sci-fi, and I like having it kind of grounded in realism, but even hard sci-fi is a lot of fantasy, right? So no, I don't. Transporters, lightsabers, Death Stars, I'm cool with all that.
Dan?
I think of what Marvin the Martian would say about that. He would. I absolutely believe that he actually did have a detonator that could be replicated in the real world, and I've been working on it. Not really.
Where's my kaboom? Where's my earth-shattering kaboom?
That's the bar I rise to. It's Looney Tunes.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, and there may be a separation between our kind of Looney Tune or Star Wars fantasy as opposed to playing Star Trek or Traveler. One of my issues is that I don't believe we'll ever have light speed. I don't think that is a possible technology, and so I to some degree like to have the more of a Firefly style sci-fi as opposed to people jumping around. But on the other hand, I like the Traveler technology and the way it's designed, and it's fun to play.
Dwight,
so it doesn't ruin it.
You just trapped humanity in our universe.
I believe I have.
Or solar system, I mean, yeah.
And I think the more I learn about our solar system, the more I realize we are never leaving it.
Yeah. There's some interesting things. It's definitely complicated for sure.
We find a wormhole, but I mean, when you talk about the hard science, the sci-fi rather than fantasy, I get what you mean. But not being a physicist, I kind of take their word for it as it is. So I don't know that I would be able to really know the difference between something that was possible and impossible in the far future.
Yeah, so, I think I would only think 100%. About it when a player, if the players have a certain level of expectations, right? So if a player brings it up or holds you accountable as a GM, that would be the only time I guess my mind would go there.
And that's where having access to technology, whether you're using whatever resource you're using online, is handy when you're running a game and somebody asks you, "Well, I'm not sure that's how a pulsar would react with the ship." You're like a solar flare. I think that's wrong, and so you can at least do a quick search and figure out what does it do in this situation.
It's like, okay, Stephen Hawking, you want to interrupt the game for this?
Yeah. But you do run into players who have more knowledge than you sometimes, right? So I guess when that happens, it kind of throws you a little bit. But yeah, having access to information at your fingertips definitely helps.
And so there's two things to unpack there that I think about. One is, so we both, Phzoul and I, have run Traveler and played Traveler. I don't know if have you played Traveler, Dan?
No, I've heard of it.
Yeah,
but I haven't played it.
So because I know Phzoul started even later, so I didn't start it till 2015. So I mean, for a 70s game, that's pretty late for me. But you always run into people who know the system, the Imperium, the technology, the setting way better. But On the other hand, there is more like thicker stuff. Like if you wanted to run Star Trek as a game, but you'd never watched an episode of Star Trek and only kind of loosely knew it, you're always going to run into people who know the canon better than you. And I think the technology kind of stuff is separate from the kind of canon of backstory. The if you had to run a game in something you were unfamiliar with, that could be harder, maybe. What do you think?
I think
Even the Lord of the Rings, if you're thinking fantasy, that kind of thing too, right?
Yeah, I think I would be a little intimidated to run a Lord of the Rings scenario with someone who is a Tolkien scholar. Like, I'd rather just teach that person how to GM.
Right.
Yeah.
And really, same goes for, like, if someone is a huge fan of the Forgotten Realms and they want to play in a D&D game or whatever system they want, if they've read every single book and they're an avid fan of that setting, and I've played a few of the video games and read a few of the books, there's a big difference there. And if they want the pure version, maybe they should consider stepping up to that seat.
I like it.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'd have to warn them in advance. I'm like, well, I like this setting, what I've seen of it, but I got to tell you, for your purists out there, I'm going to adapt this in ways that suit me in this campaign, unless you'd like to step up, because I'd be just fine playing.
I feel like Phzoul, I've heard you
when I
say
was younger,
something
I might have the
similar.
time.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's different
Oh
when we were
yeah,
younger, that's for sure.
yeah. Oh, there's definitely. I think there's several players in my group that know the D&D, like D&D in particular. They know the books inside and out. They know the realms inside and out. And like I said in a previous contact or previous podcast, I find that in most games, the players in general give you a pass, they buy in. But I find of all the games, D&D is the one where players feel the most. Um, they're the most apt to correct you, especially around mechanics and things like that.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
being that it's the best known. And
Yeah.
I remember back in the year, probably, 26 years ago, I was playing in a Gen Con game. And I knew the second edition rules inside and out, and the third edition rules. I think I don't know that well anymore, but memorized the page numbers, that kind of thing. And I found myself not criticizing the GM, but my friend who was sitting next to me, I was saying, "That's wrong," and he's like, "Shut up." And I didn't want to be a rules lawyer. I knew what that word meant. But now, I don't know fifth edition half as well as I did second. I don't think.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, like you start that with second edition, because I think when I was gaming, the first time I ever ran into, like I like most of my formative years were first edition, and of course there's a little bit of OD&D and Holmes and maybe some basic that occurred when I was too young to remember, because I was only like 3, right? So that doesn't really count. But so 1E, I never really encountered it, but when we started playing 2E in high school, that was the first time I ran into people. And I don't know if it's because of being that age or if it was 2E itself, but I've always attributed 2E as being the start of dealing with the rules lawyer, like where you have people, there's always somebody in the group that says, "Oh, no, that's not the right rule," that kind of thing.
I'm not really sure why that is either, because like rules mastery was always more of something that was baked into third edition, from what I understand. It was more rules mastery. It was more complex for the GM, at least. It seemed
Yeah,
to me.
and I'm going to alienate all our 2E fans. You can alienate all our 3E fans. Hey, Phzoul, can you alienate some of the 5E ones for us?
Okay. Yes. Well, I think it comes down. I think rules lawyering I mean, one, it comes down to rules lawyers. It's about, from their point of view, fairness. But I think when the game became complex enough that knowing the rules gave you an advantage in your character creation and your classes and races and levels, like when min maxing became something that was real, like, oh, if I know these rules, I'm going to have a real advantage. That's when I think things shifted.
And I could be wrong, but I've read in places that was to some extent encouraged in
Oh,
third
for sure.
edition
From the
and
business
Lord of the
perspective, of
Rings and
course. Yeah.
Pathfinder.
Yeah, I would agree because they want players to buy the books. I don't want you to own the core rule books. I want you to own all the supplements. I want you to have all the different classes. Like I'm constantly, from the company perspective, I'm constantly expanding the options because you're going to pay more money for them. I mean, that's a good business, I guess, but it
Hmm.
complicates the GM, right? Makes their job harder.
Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah, which is
curious.
what
I'd be curious to I get your opinion on it. But if I think about second ed, even if I think about the older games, I think about them as being pro GM first, and then 5e is player first
I'd say the
in
same
terms of
about
the
3.
philosophy. Or 3e could be player
Well,
first, or yeah.
And I never played 4E.
it
Oh, I
certainly
don't. Has anyone?
is. I did find, even when I tried by the rules running 5th edition in ways that I did still, I think, seeped in the 2nd edition era, because I kind of skipped 3rd and played Legendary Adventure for a long time and then other things. I found in retrospect now that it was a lot more difficult to accidentally kill a player. And I
Hmm.
don't I I don't mean I was trying to do it on purpose, but sometimes what I thought was a challenging scenario, I just had more of an intuitive feel for it with 2nd edition. I knew
Hmm.
what the potential of a total party kill might be, and that was never a science, but I found myself surprised sometimes where I was not. I don't like to fake it, unless I made some terrible design mistake that would punish the players and make them want to kill me. Uh, I try and see how the dice land, but they're a lot tougher in 5th edition, I think, than what I remember from 2nd.
No, no question. From my perspective, like just as an example, um, I think it's Shadow of the Dragon Queen, the recent Dragonlance one. I arbitrarily doubled the hit points of every monster, and it didn't make a difference.
Yeah,
I
that's
needed
telling.
to. I needed to in the final battle. I needed to. They wiped the main villain out in like 2 rounds. I was like, Jesus, okay, I gotta just double the hit points.
So
Get
Dan, you
some
mentioned
players
the
like, that's too easy.
yeah, you mentioned the intuitive thing of some of the other games, and I think there's some aspect of your being comfortable with the system, but there's more to it than that. Like certainly with first edition, I never had trouble building things with appropriate challenges. That usually it may not go exactly how I expected, but usually somewhere in that direction. With Legendary Adventure, I never felt like I didn't have an idea either. For whatever reason, I found Legendary Adventure to be way more intuitive with setting up challenges. Once I understood the system, which did not happen right away, which took a lot of talking with Gary at the time. Um, but I run a lot of faraway land now, and in that system, I have no idea. I throw things at my players, and I have no idea if it's going to kill them all, if they're just. And sometimes what I think, and I'm terrified that this challenge is going to be a total party kill. They just wipe the floor with it, and then the next thing I think, well, they're just going to go over this kind of pedantic encounter, and we'll move on to the next. And they struggle with the pedantic encounter, and they all end up captured, or something like that. Like I can't so I've to some degree given up and enjoy the idea that I, as a GM, have no idea what's going to happen with this challenge.
And sometimes I like being surprised because they take down an enemy with some sort of ingenious idea that I just let fly because it sounds so good and it works for the story and it makes them feel good. So I kind of will ignore hit points after a certain extent if what they've chosen as a group or the actions that they've taken just makes so much sense and makes the moment exciting. That's not typically how I approach it, but
Yeah,
I'd
you
rather
mention
that
it.
than it end up being a slog.
Yeah, you mention it, and there have been times, not with Faraway Land, but with other systems where I have when they've come, especially when they're doing well, and you can kind of see the round by round going, and you're going, they're gonna win. It's just gonna take time, and you just let whoever has the next epic move, they do it. They take them out and kind of so you can
Yeah,
move on, but that makes them feel good too, right?
it does. And it's you're at the table and you're watching people's faces and you're getting a sense of how antsy they're getting, or they're thinking this is concluding, or different players have different preferences for how much they pay attention to tactics, or how much depth they want to go into with every maneuver. So it really depends on the game system and the players too. You kind of have to read the room.
Mm-hmm. So we've been talking about how powerful the characters are. One of the questions that's been in my mind since last week, I've been mulling it over kind of just in the back of my mind for a week, is when did dragons stop being a thing of awe and fear and just another monster to kill? Or was it always like that, and that's just a weird way of I have a weird way of remembering it. Were dragons weaker early on than I remember, or were they really kind of that thing you didn't just rush in and fight a dragon, but now people do?
Maybe they ought to watch Vox Machina.
The House of the Dragon or any of the Game of Thrones, or
Yeah.
yeah,
I
they
mean,
do. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure because whether how dragons were in 2E, because 2E had Dragonlance, and then 3E I'm not certain either. I just can't remember. 1E they were terrifying, but
They still
Yeah,
can be.
well, see, I think it comes down to abilities, right? Like, I mentioned this before. Like, I believe a 5e thief has uncanny dodge, so a dragon breathes at them. Don't they automatically save for half? And if they make their save, they get no damage. Like when you have an ability like that, how threatening is your opponent, right? Um, but here's a question: do GMs run dragons the way that they should be run? That's you know, I mean, I would look at it. Would a dragon ever land and fight? No, probably not.
so the first thing I got polymorphed into a dragon in an OD&D campaign in 2020-21, like when I was in that campaign, and my initial reaction was I would just swoop in, grab as many people as I could, fly up really high, and drop them. I
Drop
mean, I
them,
wouldn't even worry about the breath
yeah.
weapon. You just grab a bunch, fly
Yeah,
really up high, like they're not going to survive. But at the time, the GM was like, "Oh, you got to roll to hit." All right, so I rolled, and I can't remember whether I hit or not. It doesn't matter. But then because I was in melee, I'm now in melee range. There was no flying by and picking a bunch of people up.
yeah,
And I was like, man, well that kind of gimps the dragon a bit if you can't do that.
yeah.
But it brings to mind, as GMs, do you use your villains and your monsters to their full capabilities, or do you often hold back?
Well, it depends on their role. There's a fine line there, isn't there? Like, because you want that memorable villain, whether it's a dragon or a vampire or a human assassin that is recurring, or one that manipulates from the background, or they know their name. It's that kind of villain they love to hate that keeps coming back. But then it can cross over into GM favorite NPC or monster that just can't be defeated because he's too cool to the GM, and they stop striking fear into the players' imagination and start just annoying them. Not crossing that line is sometimes a delicate balance.
Mm-hmm. Phzoul?
I think during the so I kind of like building. I do like building up the main villain, and there being early on in a campaign, of course, the villain is pretty undefeatable because the character is a low level or what have you. Uh, in terms of the epic, listen, the first villain that really struck a chord with me was Darth Vader, right? So um, if I was using Darth Vader as a villain, I wouldn't hold back, and I don't think I do. When it comes to the final fight, the villain is using everything in their power to win, um, as are the players. So yeah, I don't think I do. I might hold back on minions, but not the main villain.
Hmm.
Now, that said, I'm not. My goal isn't for the main villain to win. Now that said, I'm not like I'm not going to design things so that the main villain's going to come out on top, because that's no fun. But I want them to feel like I want the players to feel like when they defeat the main villain, they earned it.
Yeah,
So
that's
start them out at
hard to
low level.
force. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
If you start them out at low level and making sure that villain doesn't cross their paths too directly, or that
That's right.
that he
Yeah.
doesn't have good reason to notice them too much, as they slowly start to dispatch his lower echelons of authority or whatever. Otherwise, if they make too much noise too soon, realistically, someone like Vader would just be like, "Okay, enough of this," and he'd step right in and take out that lightsaber and be done with it.
Well, you guys just gave me an idea for my next session. I'll write that down.
So I imagine, that's part of the design, right? Especially if you have a villain that can travel large distances in an instant, whether it's a wizard who can teleport or whatever. Sometimes the players might think, why hasn't he just popped in here and taken us out yet? What is it that's preventing it? I think like that sometimes. Like, if this
I'll
guy
tell
is
you,
so powerful.
yeah. But so I'm going to throw I guess maybe Dan, and see if you've done this. Have you ever had a villain? So I've done this a few times where the villain actually isn't physically formidable at all. If the players ever get their hands on them, they're toast. So they're completely reliant on their minions or plan or whatever. They're completely they themselves are not physically imposing. Have you ever done that?
Yeah. Uh, maybe the administrator type.
Yeah,
They might
yeah,
hold high political power.
yeah.
The people that they hire to surround them are the ones that they have to be contending with first. Maybe getting to such a person would be no easy feat. But once there, then that person might get to their knees and be like, I was just kidding.
That's right. That's it.
Would you like
There is some.
a position here? I have many chairs open now that you've killed them all.
It is interesting. I think you can gauge how much the players or how they're feeling through their characters, how much they hate the villain in the end, by if the villain is dropping to their knees and begging for mercy, what they do.
For sure. And I've had that situation.
Have you ever been worried about your players' psychology after a few games?
Try not to.
Like, would you please
I
stop killing the children?
oh, jeez. Yeah. No,
Maybe I
don't.
used too
Yeah.
many doppelgangers again.
Oh my gosh, that is a running thing. That wasn't on purpose and it wasn't by design, but there is a running shapeshifter villain in my current campaign. And there has been, again, it wasn't by design, it sort of happened where some of the characters got cloned. So then there was and they weren't opposites, they were identicals that were cloned. And then, but you see, the shapeshifters weren't identical, they were actual enemies, but the clones were same memories, same everything. So I, as a GM, had to figure out what would the clone do based on what I know about the player, and that became, so I kind of had to really rely on the players. What would you do in this circumstance? Well, that's what this guy does. But yeah,
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes when you get in those convoluted kind of things like that, where it's too much of something. Well, when have I crossed the line and there's too many? But as I said, none of it was by design. It was all reactionary to what they did, because they went to war with a race that makes clones. What do I do?
Yeah, I think you've crossed the line when you just notice your players are starting to indiscriminately kill NPC children on the street just because
Yeah.
it could be a doppelganger.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I guess I would.
Wow. Yeah.
Whoops.
What
Causing a
was
little
it?
too
Well,
much paranoia
so
there.
I would throw that back. What do you do when players cross the line? Where you as a GM are like, oh,
Well, I mean, if you're playing and I use the word very loosely, realistic world, if they start doing things like that, then all their characters may die at the hands of the people who take notice of them killing people indiscriminately in the street. Just like in one of my campaigns, this was many, many years ago, but I would run with the consequences and I'd warn them. It's like, well, if you really want to stand up to the king and say to his face that he has no authority, then you might end up dead right now. Just letting you know. I've given, do you really want to play this out now that you're surrounded by the entire garrison?
Oh, so you give, that makes sense. You give them that heads up, a choice. Yeah.
Yeah, and some actions the players know are just about suicidal, but they do it anyway because it's within their character. Others will be more cautious.
It's interesting when you give players the choice. Hey, like they say they're going to do something. You're like, are you sure that's what you want to do? Because some players will immediately like, whoa, wait a second. If the GM's asking me that, maybe I'm going to rethink that. And other players are like, no, yeah, that's what I do. I'm 100%. That's what I'm doing. And you're like, okay, let's go. But I always like to give that, like, are you sure? And if they're committed, that's fine. Let's do it. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. If they can
So
think of some reason why they can get out of that, I'm all ears. But
so do you make the authorities in a place generally powerful enough that they should be feared? And the reason I bring that up is I remember the very first time I ran an adventure where that sort of came into play was Egg of the Phoenix, which I think is a Frank Menser module. And the party started attacking, doing something in the town, the main starting town, and then the guards just started pouring in, and I was running out of guards. And that's what one of the players said. Well, eventually you're going to run out of guards because we're going to kill all of them. This would be back in the 80s, 90s, whenever, like, that time period.
Murder hobos.
Yeah, but I was playing it by the rules, right? And then in the book, the guards just weren't powerful enough to even mob them in the rules I was using. At least how I was handling that was probably incorrect, but that was the first time, and that changed me how I've gamed in the future. So do you guys keep your authorities, your guards, powerful enough that they can, bring people in line if they're breaking the law?
Not always for
I'd
me.
say, yeah, I mean, I'd say you might let them kill the guards, but then the knights show up or something. Like there's like, I guess if I think about reality, what would happen? Well, a bunch of people might get to jump on the guards and take them out, but is the kingdom going to let that stand, or are they going to call in mercenaries? Or are they going to call in the court wizard? So you might, you might, again, going back to what Dan was saying, it's they might defeat the guards, but they're going to have to deal with the consequences of that.
Yeah, and
Right.
if you have what was in the Palladium system, they had aberrant evil, or they had those interesting different alignments. But if
Oh
you have a
yeah,
ruler
yeah, the alignment.
who is kind of like that, he might send his crew of powerful mercenaries, minions, whatever, to confront the player characters and say, well, obviously you've proven your mettle killing everyone in this small fisher's town, but let's see what you can do if we send you into this dungeon now. If you get out alive, maybe we'll spare your heads, that kind of thing. But that ends up being a very different kind of game. I guess it would work a little better if it was just kick down the door dungeon kind of stuff. They started out that way. You had rulers that were more interested in proving your might. And you did something terrible like that, and they thought that was just making you a good candidate for going deeper into a dungeon. That would be fun. But if you had a lawful ruler who was, quote unquote good, that they might just get killed.
One of the things that I've enjoyed with Faraway Land in the campaign I'm running is the idea that no matter how powerful you get, you're not so much more powerful than the average person that somebody can't sneak up behind you or can't just come in and just kill you. If you're doing horrible things, then why wouldn't some peasants rise up and stab you? And in that game, because every time you go up a level, you only gain a single hit point. So you get 5th, 6th, 7th level, you're still within range of if somebody's doing 2d6, 3d6 damage to you, or there's a large margin of success, which that game relies heavily on. So if you roll an attack and I roll an attack, get a 7, the defender gets a 3. That's a margin of success of 4, so you add 4 more to the damage, and so that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And if you're getting three more than the person, that's considered, you might get an extra attack or something. So you can, by a lucky roll, can still take out somebody way more powerful than you. which is partly why I think they have trouble with mobs, but don't have trouble with the large, like giants or things like that in my game.
I wonder whether there's a correlation between player caution and how long it takes to create the character in conjunction with how deadly the rules are in terms of their verisimilitude. Like, if it takes 2 hours to make a character and you know that it's easy to die, are they going to be reckless?
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
I think there is an aspect to that. But and on the other as well, adding on to that, how long have you been playing that character? It will change. I think that
Oh,
changes
for
things
sure.
too.
Yeah, but I think the longer you've played a character, and I don't know whether you've experienced this, but I think, if you're running a campaign, the longer someone's played the character, the more they expect the GM to allow that character to give them a pass if things go south.
Maybe.
I felt that tension running games for a spouse.
Yeah.
Like, if I kill off this character, am I going to end up with a divorce? I don't know.
Yeah.
Make a bad decision, do I just suddenly get a stomach ache and I have to go run to the bathroom? I don't know. Like, it's a very dangerous thing, because I only had so many spousal hit points.
Yeah. I think
Well, it's
running
funny.
a game
Oh,
with you.
sorry.
Go ahead, David.
No, I was just saying, even from a GM perspective, sometimes, especially if we're running a campaign, your stories get caught up in the characters, and you yourself are going, "Oh, I can't kill this character because then I kill the storyline." Right? So,
The plot armor. Yeah.
yeah.
I've been a player in a campaign where they specifically they designed kind of the heroic part around these two elf characters, of which I wasn't. And when those players left the game because of just life stuff, it was not because they didn't like the game. Everything kind of came crashing down because all like they had the big magical swords only worked for elves, and what do you do with that at that point? Like, and I don't know, like that GM did handle it, but it was behind the scenes, so I don't have his answers. But for me, it's more often less about the character dying than the player not showing up for the session. I really needed that character to shine. Like I designed that
Oh,
like a plot around that character, and now that character's not being run by the player. What do what do you do then?
Think of the movie The Gamers. I have Mark the
Oh,
Red
jeepers.
standing there just staring
Yeah,
off. Uh,
and that's often what we do. Yeah.
his player's gone, the GM's forgotten about him. Player comes back, it's like, blood, death, charges in.
I
But
did I have done an machina with one of my players where because they have this artifact. So whenever they're not there now, I just have the artifact take over. So the other players get to see the artifact actually used correctly. And then when they come back, of course, because they were taken over, they don't remember anything that happened. So they have to be filled in, and then they go about using the artifact incorrectly anyway, because they don't really know what happened.
the funniest thing that a GM has ever done when it comes to people not showing up is every time you didn't show up, your character got kidnapped by goblins.
I like it.
you know, that reminds me. I joined a game once. And it was being run every week at a game store, but I knew that often I wouldn't be able to be there because I worked on Saturday nights pretty frequently. But I really wanted to participate. I created a character who it was built into his concept that he could be randomly teleported away by a broken magic item that he had.
Oh, interesting.
He knew that it'd be random. He didn't want to get rid of it though, because it had enough properties that made it worth the risk. But it made it for a really convenient way to just disappear out of the game. If I didn't show up, all the GM had to do was, well, it malfunctioned again. He's gone.
I like that. I do like that. That's a good idea. One campaign I wrote, which was when I got back into Holmes, we ran the IGPay campaign by Chris Clark, and I had them all. They found this kind of crystal ball type thing with smoke in it, and it was an artist hay, so it could hold. Every time a player wasn't there, the character just got sucked in, and if a new player came along and wanted to play the game, they would pop out of the crystal ball, and that's just kind of how we did it for that campaign, and that solved that problem. I don't know if that's like a realistic thing to always use, but for that mostly silly campaign to begin with, because it had the whole Pig Latin thing going for it. But that one had an owl that actually picked one of the characters up and flew up into the air and dropped them and killed them. It didn't even need a dragon, just a giant owl.
That's a hoot.
Yeah. If your owl's more dangerous than your dragon, are you in trouble?
It would be unwise to take on an owl like that.
It was terrifying. They were like from a I could see them change the moment one of the characters got picked up and just dropped, because they theoretically could have survived, but once you roll the damage, if you're not rolling all ones and twos for the damage, they're done. And yeah, the players did not want to mess with that owl after that. They just fled. But that one character did die.
Giant owl? How big
It
was
was a
that
giant
owl?
owl.
It was that giant owl. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to mess with a giant owl.
No. Did you want to talk about the Eldritch role-playing game, Dan?
Sure, I always like to talk about that, or some of the things that went into its design. And I know you played Legendary Adventure, and you've played Eldritch.
Yeah, with you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we were both players. You were another player, and somebody from France was running it. Somebody from overseas, anyway.
I know I have a friend also in Canada, Quebec, who was the artist for Eldritch for years. He might have.
Oh, really?
Oh no, I know you're talking about Gail. He was over. Yeah, he was in France. I think he did run a game once. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, time flies. But I have the 3 editions. I guess they're not editions, but I have the 3 books in front of me here, and I'll put them up for Phzoul kind of look. Although our listeners won't be able to see that. This would be the first one, right? Or at least the first one I have.
Published by Goodman Games in 2008, and then the revised, which was a 2013 Kickstarter, got that put out. And then that's the second edition, which was Kickstarter in 2023.
But if you look at them next to each other, you can see how they more than doubled with each iteration.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Over 25 years of work on those all combined.
Wow.
The original edition, I started working with a guy named Randy Petrus, who was a friend back from high school days. And
really?
I got that published by Goodman Games, which was a surprise. It was right before 4th edition came out.
Oh, was it? So how much did how much was Randall involved in the creation of the game?
He was the one that wanted me to help him co-author a game in the first place back in 1998 or something. And even back then I said, nobody wants a new game. I thought, you come into someone, every GM has their own pet project or their own iteration of the rules, and you come in and they're like, I created my own system, and they have a stack of printout, and you're like, oh my God, no, please. Everybody just wanted to play what they knew. I was really reluctant to do that. But then what convinced me was him. And it wasn't just because he had some good ideas. He knew what he wanted generally, but it wasn't the way I ran things. And it wasn't what I wanted. That was one of the reasons I actually started to work on it, because I wanted a compromise between his style of play and mine. He and his friends, some of my oldest friends back then, they were trained martial artists, or they knew weapons inside and out. It was kind of like what you were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, where what do you do when someone knows so much more than you do? And they would, in their games, they'd stand up and with mimicry, they would show the moves they were going to make, or they were playing different systems in D&D. They hadn't even played Dungeons and Dragons. They played mostly Palladium or other things, and even then they would change the rules because they were more about, well, if it is realistic and according to my knowledge or how I think it should play out, then even though the dice might guide those results, it's our interpretation that's going to actually determine the result. And trying to play D&D straight with someone like that, where they've imposed hit location, I think they might like GURPS or something like that, they'd play GURPS too, into the abstract hit points, where a hit is not necessarily a hit, right? They hated that. So if I had a bad guy with 100 hit points and they went to great lengths to describe exactly how it was they were going to hit this enemy, and then they rolled the dice and it dictated a hit, then it had to literally be a hit. And for me to do what I would normally do, which would be to describe it in abstract terms, if you were trying to strike a wizard with a robe and he doesn't have any armor or shield or anything, and you hit him for 20 hit points, I'm not going to say that he took it straight to his face. Right? But I didn't like that. Like, well, I described it with great detail. So how come I missed? I'm like, well, you didn't miss. You know how it is.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I need to, if I'm going to design something, maybe I can design it so that I can find some sort of middle ground between their style and mine, where I like the abstract. And that's where the layers of hit points came in. That idea.
The defense pools.
The defense pools, right?
Yeah.
Where part of it was I wanted to kind of force the players to take ownership of the abstract description of how it was that they were mitigating the harm. So the very first iteration of Eldritch was just an alteration to D&D, so that I could somehow semantically defend my preference for the more abstract hit point systems. And
Gotcha.
I would put the onus on them to describe how do you sidestep that, given you've got this pool of resources, which is how even Gary Gygax described it to begin with. It's just they didn't really grok that, or they didn't want to. It's not they couldn't; they just didn't want to. And I'm sure there were some systems that would have appealed to them far more than my preferences at the time. But as I got further into it, especially just a few years later when I started playing Legendary Adventure, and I thought, one of Gary's earlier concepts, and that was a knife can kill as readily as a sword. Well, that would appeal to them, and it appealed to me as well. So I took those two concepts, and then I combined it with the third, which was simply, I liked the idea of a fast and easy way to lay down a bunch of minions. I liked fast combat. I thought if you had the dice and they represented the bad guys, you just throw down some 6-siders and some 4-siders, and each one you got 6 hit points and you got 6 potential harm points. So you roll that die and it's the potential harm range. It also happens to be each one's hit points. You've got creatures with 4 to 12 right there. Easy. One of the tokens, the dice themselves could represent them. It also makes the math a little easier when you're trying to find balance in combat between the bad guys and the good guys, so assuming that the characters are built in similar ways. And then Randy was a computer programmer and I would say a mathematician. I am certainly not. So he helped me a great deal with, especially, before we had the souped up calculators of today called AI or whatever. He helped me with the design in terms of math of it and helping me test all of that, because I wanted the probability spreads and that sort of thing. I'm better at that now, but he was very good at that.
It's very, very helpful, I think, to have somebody, whether you're making a game or even like one of my players in my weekly game, she is incredible with math, and I've never asked why or like the background to it, but we'll do something and someone will even just make a flippant comment. Oh man, what were the odds of that? And she will within minutes have worked it out and tell you, well, actually the odds are 1 in 30,005. Like she'd have worked right. It's neat. It's very impressive. I can't do it either, but it's neat to have someone around that can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. He was kind of like that. He was super smart, but then he helped a lot with the revised edition as well. Then it sort of disappeared. So I did the second edition on my own.
What was the thing that made you move kind of into the polyphony aspect, where it was the polyphony system? And what was the changes made to go from what you had before you started thinking about this epiphany?
Well, and I'm kind of skirting like what the game mechanics were of Eldritch and that sort of thing, because in brief, I sold the game, and that leads into a larger discussion about sometimes how difficult it is to maintain a publishing company in this industry if you're a small fish. And I sold it to make sure that I would fulfill my backer obligations.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I was able to sell it at all is kind of amazing. It wasn't for very much. It was enough to get the books out. But that's why, since I'm no longer working on it and I no longer own it, I'm moving on from it. However, a lot of the concepts that went into it are still very much the things that I care about today. And multi-genre is one of those things. I liked GURPS a lot. I liked the idea. I liked what was that game called? With Torg? Is that what it was called?
Forg, yeah. Yeah.
Torg, yeah. Even Palladium had Rifts and Banestorm, and I always
Yeah.
liked the mashup of genres, and I liked systems that could support that well. Really,
And
D20, D20 modern, even today, you got
yeah,
Star Wars coming out for 5th edition and everything else. So,
Dangerous Journeys was always intended to be that, right? A multi-genre system.
oh yeah,
And I think Legendary Adventure, that was certainly heavily on Gary's mind too at some points.
oh absolutely, yeah. He had what was in the works. I don't think it was published, but it was the science fiction version of Legendary Adventure.
Legendary Asterogues, yeah. So
Yes, that's
and he
exactly
had
it.
Elder Worlds too, which was being converted. So I don't know what he originally did it, but when I was working with John Creffield and I forget Damadon's real name offhand, around around the time when he passed, and Damadon
It
was
wasn't.
working on Jerry Leonard. Was Damadon, and he had all the Elder Worlds and the Asterogues stuff at that time, and but I never heard what Elder Worlds, because that was his hard sci-fi, and Asterogues was kind of his science fantasy. Um,
Yeah, I
at
don't
least
know
as
if there
I
was a
understood it.
parallel to like Unhallowed, which was for Dangerous Journeys.
I thought there was something like that coming out, but I never actually saw like any files about that. I have the Asterogues files. I never got Elder Worlds. But I had the Wild West version that was being there was somebody running a Wild West campaign with Legendary Adventure, and so I had all the stuff they did, and I was working on a World War II for Gary at the time. That all just kind of sank when he passed away, but I thought it was a pretty solid multi-genre system. It wasn't exceptional with combat, but it was exceptional for discovery and mysteries and things like that.
Yeah, it was really flexible.
It was very flexible. I could see the world through the Legendary Adventure kind of eyes. I think I mentioned it in a previous episode that it was like the
Hold on.
Matrix for me. Um, Phzoul, when we were talking about just for those listeners, Dan had to step out for a second. When we were talking about Legendary Adventure, how a knife and a sword could kill. So all weapons in Legendary Adventure do 1 to 20 damage, but the minimum changes. So if you have a dagger, it does 1 to 20. You roll a 1 to 20 for a two-handed sword, but it'll have a minimum damage of 11. So it really does 11 to 20, but
Okay.
your 1 to
Yep.
1 to 10 counts as an 11.
Yep. I
I
like
mean,
that. That sounds. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because yeah, because I've often. So one of the challenges. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, a skilled knife fighter is going to be just as deadly as a skilled swordsman, right?
yeah, and it had a rule in it. So if you did, I can't remember if it was with the criticals or with, I think it's when you did max damage, you got to roll half the die again. So if you rolled a 20, you could roll a
Oh,
D10. If you
okay.
got a 10, you could roll a D5. If you got a 5, then I think it dropped to a D2 and then 1 point. So I forget what the max that all adds up to. But so you can do a massive amount of damage if you were really, really lucky. And then if you had a critical hit, that would bypass all armor. And I think way I was playing it, that if you rolled a 0-1 on your attack, you just did max damage and bypassed all
Okay.
armor without having to make any roll. I don't know how Dan ran those, but I like to see the lethality of it. But usually you still require 2 really solid hits to take somebody out. But you could take somebody out in 2 solid hits because you'd have about somewhere between 30 and 60 health points.
I like the idea of being able to bypass armor. That doesn't really exist in D&D. And I like the yeah. So interestingly, so did it take into account? So let's say you're charging me and you have a dagger and I have a pike. Did it take into account the weapon's size or length or?
The weapons had a initiative modifier, if I remember.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So if you had a smaller weapon, you get. I think if a bigger weapon, you would be delayed in your initiative. Although I don't know how many people use that rule.
The ability to bypass armor was a big part of the combat design in Eldritch too.
Hmm.
You had the
Oh,
layered
that's cool.
defense. I thought that
Yep.
was. I also like the idea of something like a giant scorpion with the poison tail. If it tries to strike, it has to get through the active defense first, and then through the armor, which was randomly determined in its effectiveness. And then if it actually made it through to the what I call the passive defense, the actual body, then it could inflict the poison damage.
Yeah, interesting.
Do you think
I
that
didn't
when
like
somebody
systems like. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, do you think if like when somebody puts on armor that their ability to use the armor should be part of at least some role playing games? That's an important aspect. So you have a random thing, but then if you put on a pile of plate mail and you don't know how to move in it, it must be very different. Like you would just absorb blows, and maybe the armor takes some of it, but it'd probably take you pretty quickly if you weren't trained in that, right?
Yeah, that's realistic. I probably in Eldritch, I'd kind of hand wave it away and say if you were wearing it, you knew how to wear it well, and that was just the way that was built. But in some games, what you're saying that makes sense. You'd probably not want to do that if you wanted to be uh, more effective in some ways.
And because
I'm just. Oh,
go
sorry. Good.
go ahead, Phzoul, jump in.
Oh, it was an Eldritch question. I was curious. The pools of defense sound really cool. Because if you watch certain TV shows or movies, when two knights or two heavily armored opponents are fighting each other, it all comes down to who can get through the armor. Um, is that something that I guess in Eldritch is there? I guess rules around. Well, two people in full plane armor comes out. Suddenly, getting past the armor becomes the most important part of the fight.
Well, yeah, I think it would be that now. I had it was almost like it was a compromise, but I liked that in a game like Kurse, they had the what was the damage rating or the armor ratings. It was a static number, so sometimes you'd run into an enemy they just had no prayer of getting through. I'm sure there's some that play that game that know more than I do that had more realistic ways around that, or but I didn't like that,
Yeah.
and since I still wanted to keep it abstract, I had it so that if you had plate armor, you would roll a 1 die 12.
Oh, okay.
Uh, and if you rolled a 1, it just meant that your opponent found a weakness in it. Rolled a 12, then that would absorb the what I call potential harm, not damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I called it semantic design. It was potential harm until it literally went past the
With
point where
harm.
it would
Yeah.
hit
I
defenses,
like that. Yeah.
and it was damage. Um, Now, if you like in Eldritch, your your ability dictated not just your potential harm, but the corresponding active defense. So if you were really high in melee and swordsmanship with specialties and things like that, then your ability to parry and that sort of thing was correspondingly high.
That makes
So
sense. Yeah.
maybe that your some would say, oh well, defense, they'd be taught defense first. So, it's not necessarily like that in real life. Oh, I know that, but it worked.
Good.
Um,
I remember when my nephew had a complaint. His complaint about Legendary Adventure was that his ability to fight did not impact someone's ability to hit him, and that really bothered him in Legendary Adventure. That was something he couldn't get past, or at least not while we were playing. But with Eldritch, it sounds like that you have a kind of solution for that.
It was directly related, but it could also mean like if you had someone that was a magic user and all of their character points build was dumped into magic, they didn't have much in the way of active defense. So if I didn't forbid magic users from using armor, they'd really need it. They were going to be, if they dared be near the front lines, there was no rules against them using a sword either, but they might not be very skilled in it. But if you have a warrior come up before that magic user could get off a spell, and they swung that, they're going to get right through the active defense. So that armor had better work, or they better have some sort of magic armor or something to help them, because a magic user probably put a lot of their points into stuff that didn't beef up their passive defense or their actual physical strength. That they would get taken out real quick, kind of like a D&D wizard, but just a different mechanism. But by the same token, you'd have some characters that could bypass the active defense of a warrior with psychic damage. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. I don't know if other games do, like Savage Worlds. I wanted to look into that. wasn't sure how good. I've heard a lot of good things about it, but
I mean, I haven't played the more recent editions of Savage Worlds. I've only played kind of, because I was in their beta test, so I did the test drive rules and then argued with them a lot about some of the decisions they made. I think absolutely nothing I suggested made it into the final game. But the first edition that they really put out after that, one of the problems you ran into specifically seemed to affect fantasy was the you could hit something, but if you didn't do enough damage, it just had no effect. And so you could fight a monster and it could just go on forever and ever and ever. But most of the time, like a lot of the other mechanics worked really well for dealing with mooks and stuff. So like if you're leading a regiment or something, everybody in your regiment, one hit, they're down, but you're a special character, you're a hero, so you'll take multiple hits before you go down. But that allowed you as a GM to not have to deal with hit points for all the little goblins or whatever that are banging around. So there's some cool things in Savage Worlds, but wasn't perfect. I don't think it was as fast as some other systems.
So
do you still play Eldritch?
Kind of I would. Kind of a bittersweet thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, it'll probably take time. Yeah.
Like I'm working on a new RPG that has some of the spirit of that, though it's not built on the same game system. I called it Terminus RPG, and it's about an AI simulated world, a dark fantasy world, where the characters don't know that it's a simulated AI world. And the AI is dedicated to keeping things in check and predictable, and according to what its idea of a stable, although dark fantasy world, because that's what it was charged with, to do that. So the player characters are like in that world concept. They're trying to keep reality from falling apart. So it's kind of like a medieval Matrix kind of thing. But I haven't had time to really play that.
Yeah. When you're ready to do some demos, you'll have to do one here. We'll be happy to have you.
I'd love to. I have a website that's built for it, and you can create characters on it and take a look if you'd like.
If you send me the link, I'll put it in the description for the podcast.
Okay.
Just to kind of continue moving us along. I don't want to make it feel like I'm skipping over anything or lingering too long on things. I did want to ask about the World Builders Archive, or whatever it's called now. I always call it Gygaxian Fantasy Worlds. You were doing the editing on that, and you wrote Insidiae, right?
Did, and I co-authored World Builder with Gary.
That's right.
Original, which is now just called the Book of Facts and Things.
I'm never going to change what they're called in my mind.
That's fine.
How was what kind of direction did you get from anybody for Insidiae?
I wrote that in 2004. When I wrote the world builder, the descriptionary, that was the first one I did, and I
Okay.
wanted Gary to write it. Just Appendix A in the AD&D manuals. I thought, oh, he's really good at lists. I'd love a whole book of that, just like the AD&D fantasies. And he said to me, "That's a great idea. Why don't you write it?" And I was like, "No, you do it." Like, there's no way I'm doing that. And that's kind of like the beginning of Elders too. I'm like, I'm not doing that, and I end up doing it. But he wrote back to me, and this was funny to me. I had to tell you this. And he wrote back to me with a list. I was like, "Just start." He's like, "Look what you made me do." He's like, "Now you're gonna have to co-author it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I researched that book for like a year. But with Insidiae, which is just the book of adventure plot, basically. I pitched that idea, and Trollord Games at the time said, "Sure, but you got to write 80,000 words in the next 4 months." Not working full time. It was. I thought, I don't know if I can do that,
Oh,
but I did. My wife at the time dubbed it that fucking book. And pardon my French, if that. Um,
well, we lost our
yeah,
PG rating.
I think I was trying to write that thing in the amount of time that I had, and not reinvent the wheel or talk. I didn't want to talk down anybody. I didn't want to assume that the GMs didn't know what I was talking about.
Mhm.
I wanted to approach it with some respect for the reader. Um, and therefore, it was really difficult to write. Uh, like I felt like it was bleeding through my fingers.
Can imagine.
But
That's a lot.
yeah, it's one of the like building blocks. I always like that. Building blocks. Take the familiar and organize it in a way that it becomes like a brainstorming aid.
Mm.
That's how I approached Insidiae. And
So you got
as
the chance to go back through all these, like you. Well, let's just focus on the two you were talking about. You've got had the chance to kind of go back through and re-edit them, right? So what was that
yeah,
experience like?
well, in some cases it was a real pain because, like with Canning Crew and some of the others, there was no original documents left, or there were different various files from the archives from 15 years ago, and I had to reconcile them, or I had to rebuild it page by page from OCR,
Jeez.
which was a pain. Um, and that took a long time, and especially when it came to the stuff that wasn't part of the Gygaxian Fantasy World series, but I was also working on the Yegsburg stuff that they're re-releasing, and I had to strip out
Oh,
all the D20 stuff. I was going to rewrite a lot of it for Casas and Crusades, but Stephen was like, "No, it's going to be system neutral, so we'll strip out the D20 and leave that out. We don't need to convert everything to CNC." I guess made it a little more pure. Some of it I ran into issues like there was a volume called Essential Places that was never released originally.
I know,
And
because I bought it and paid for it like it was a product that came out, and it just never arrived. And I had to like do all this research back whenever that was, and find out that they never released it and get a refund. I was like surprised.
refund from who?
It was on Amazon. I bought it off
Really?
Amazon at the time. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, okay, yeah, because the original version was written by Michael Valhalla, and he just re-released it under Skirmisher Press. That original version just became
Oh.
Swords of Kos. And then Dane McCarthy picked up, and I think took some of the inspirational ideas, but made his own. So there were two different versions. I
Oh.
had to figure that out because no one had spoken of it for so long.
So the original one became Swords of Kos, you said?
Yeah, under Skirmisher Press, a lot of that,
Oh.
or maybe not just that one setting, but a whole series of books that he had done.
I did not
But
know
he
that.
used his own world as the basis. So I tried to, uh, after speaking to him, I didn't want to step on his toes or have any kind of questions about overlap between different publications. I had rewritten like 48 locations to work with Gygax's Yigsburg. But
Oh,
the guys at Troll Lord are on a really tight schedule, and they only have so many resources. So I think that I'm just guessing, really, because none of that work made it through to the final version. So the final version is still Swords of Chaos in there.
is it? Oh,
Yeah, I mean, Michael,
so did they overrule some of your changes?
I don't think it was overruled so much as just like I don't have time for that. Because
Gotcha.
I'd say if you painstakingly rewrite 48 sections, you say I need an editor to work with me on this. I need someone to go site by site and cross check it against the original material, which is all original material of Gygax, which is extremely detailed. They might. It was never fully explained, but they might say we don't have time for that. And if the original author is okay with that material being included just as it was originally, like nothing wrong with that. So maybe I should have thought a little harder before doing that.
That's crazy.
Because it
We could
wasn't
probably
needed.
talk a whole podcast just about that stuff.
Yeah. Time I would, you know, write questions to the editor and just, just kind of filtered right through. Um, so I think that's working on a fast paced game, and I was kind of behind the scene. I was like the shadowy guy reassembling the books. So sometimes I wouldn't know what the main editor did, and suddenly it's a layout like that. And I think
Yeah,
that speaks
I
to
find
the advantage of being in the same building sometimes.
yeah, I find Troll Lord interesting in how they do things. Like I know when James Ward's Starship Warden came out, they were basically given a complete product, but then they took all this time replacing all the art and redoing a whole bunch of things in it, and it took forever for it to come out because they wanted to spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, they put a lot of time into layout and art, and that's good because those books are coming out really beautifully now. So much, so much better than it was. I don't even know, a decade ago or 2 decades. So long, but I've been impressed. Just, oh, got some of the books here. These, these are beautifully constructed. The paper is a really great quality. I feel like I'm a shill for them now, but I mean, they got their game going pretty well now. It used to be they'd get a lot of shit for well, typos or whatever. They're
Well, they had a typo on what was it when they did Legendary Essentials? They put it with a G instead of a J, like when they put the
should I,
first one they put out.
yeah, Gary was. Yeah, I used to before I was in the publishing part of it or doing editing stuff. When I was just a gamer a long time ago, I was really intolerant of any mistake in a book. I was like, what idiots! How could they get that wrong? Well, now I know. I could be that idiot. You know.
Well, Phzoul, you write a lot of stuff. What do you think? Does writing change it?
Uh, well, yeah, I mean, no question. But I don't know about you, but Dan, but do you ever go back to one of the things that I noticed is that you can go back to an old publication. Have you ever had this and you read it and you go, I can never write that now? Because the
Yeah,
headspace is different? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like I think it took a lot more enthusiasm. That's not to say that I'm unenthusiastic about writing now, but back then I was in my 20s and I didn't know what the potential or the ceiling was. I think I'm more
Yeah.
jaded now,
Okay. Yeah.
and also at the same time more forgiving of some of the quirks or problems in publishing. Um, like if someone I'm working with has a bad day, I
Yeah. You give
understand.
them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't envy it. It's hard. Just the fact that Troll Lord Games can stay afloat for 25 for all this time is
Yeah.
amazing to me.
Yeah.
Putting out a game, a supplement, anything, the amount of work that goes into that, it's huge with very little payoff. So it is a labor of love. And that, yeah, I think my enthusiasm is to measure it with the amount of safety that I feel or how much I have, a buoy in my, like if I need to find a rich person to, to be my
Funded as
benefactor.
yeah, that's right. A
Yeah.
patron.
A
You need a
patron, right?
patron.
Just
Yeah.
when they
Yeah.
asked Dave Arneson, what's your advice on role playing game writing? Don't quit your day job. Well, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
it's
for
like there
sure.
was Success in RPGs, which is a really good podcast. Same people that did Mastering Dungeons. There's a whole series, Success in RPGs. It's on YouTube, and it's pretty dire. You know, if you're doing it as a hobby or if you're doing it as just some supplemental stuff, or you just can't help yourself, like me sometimes, just gotta do it. That's great, but if you're trying to make it your sole career, hell, even if you work, in my opinion, even if you work for Wizards, it's like, okay, how long do I have before the Christmas layoffs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's rough out there. But I wouldn't
Yeah,
tell
and I would
anyone not
think
to
that
do
it
it.
no, and I would think that it's that much more difficult today than it was back then because the cost of entry is so low. Like anybody can write an RPG and throw it up on drive through or get print on demand. So there's just there's almost like there's a dozen new RPGs coming out every week type thing, right? Like there's just so many people trying to make it.
Yeah, the signal to noise and the AI art stuff like that doesn't help that at all because anyone can make an amazing looking product. Which is why I do believe in if you're going to use technology like that, be really, really transparent about it. And ex- nobody might buy it because of it, but
Yeah.
I would never try and I don't even bother really. No. I think I'd rather write for a company that can afford the artists than even try and just claw my way up now because the competition is what it is. Like the Terminus RPG, I was trying to be really like blatantly say this is a game about an AI simulated world, so I'm going to use AI art. And I was
Okay,
actually going to
interesting.
try to think of like doing band art was actually real illustrators art, like the AI creature, like the entity that told the world with band or actual artists.
Hmm.
I was gonna make that a concept in the book, but that was not, um,
Interesting.
kind of
See, you don't have to
silly.
answer this, but like, do you get paid kind of like by the word or regular, like by the hours you put in, or have you been paid for the work you've done with Trollord?
They they paid me pretty fairly,
Okay.
but you know, for what I was doing, it was a good supplemental income for a while that lasted. Um, but the industry standards are still the same, and even that was better than a retail job for a while. But,
Oh, that's
per
good.
hour breakdown. It's all relative to your needs too, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these days, for most, even with rent being what it is, can't count on that.
So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and just go back to gaming in general before we finish out the podcast and stuff. Like to pull up a few things. Like, have you guys had been part of a group where you're playing criminals, but you're trying not to necessarily be evil or bad, but you're criminals in the game?
No question. Longest running campaign that I've had probably spanned 20 years. Everybody is a criminal, but it's it's kind of like Fast and Furious. in the sense that you're I guess anti-heroes might be a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Dan?
Heroes, criminals to some extent.
Vigilante.
Anyway. Yeah, they kind of have that. I did play a game once where all the players like, let's all play evil characters and see where it goes. And they were all dead in the first session. That's pretty funny.
Evil. See, yeah, evil. I've done a few, but you're right. Evil doesn't typically last more than a session or two. It's not sustainable because invariably what it is fun. Like it's fun, but player invariably you will turn on each other, right? The players, because everybody is role playing their evil character, and so yeah,
Accurately.
fun for a one shot, but not sustainable.
I did play Paranoia once with some players, and they all got along, and I was really frustrating. It's like, why aren't you supposed to be trying to kill each other? Suddenly, they were all getting
That's funny.
along perfectly well.
Paranoia is a strange experiment. I've played it just only a few times, and I've been fascinated with running it more, but I haven't had much chance to. But I remember playing at a convention one time, and this one guy kept he'd reveal something, and I had a secret thing on my character sheet that said if anybody reveals this, you have to kill them. So I would constantly kill his character, and he was just getting more livid, more furious every time it happened, and I kept looking at the GM going, what do I do? Like, am I supposed to reveal this secret? And he's like, nope, just keep playing.
Funny.
Yeah, I remember that one game I played. They just would not hurt each other. But in the regular campaign, they were all trying to kill each other. Like what? Now
That's
I play
funny.
Paranoia and I get along. What the hell? Just a bunch of contrarians.
That's probably an interesting psychological assessment. Like
Yeah.
there's, or at least something to look at. Like why, if they're given an opportunity to kill each other, they all get along. But when you're supposed to get along, they all try to kill each other. That tells you that's probably fairly common, I would guess.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Have you guys had games that you used to enjoy and you could not play anymore for whatever reason? Whether it's again, you mentioned the headspace with the writing, or like I'll let you think about it while I give my example, which is Vampire the Masquerade. Not that I wouldn't play it again, but when I ran it and when it first came out, the first edition came out, and I was an angsty teenager or a young adult, that angst drove into the game, and that's why I enjoyed it. And when I, got a little older and that angst disappeared and I kind of became more happy in general, I just could not get into that headspace. And so I haven't played Vampire the Masquerade since. You guys have any examples like that? Or am I the only person that happens to, apparently?
Oh, no.
Well, you're talking you're talking about a genre or mechanics?
Oh, anything, just any game. And it could be
Oh, yeah.
completely different reason, like something the author said that upset you and you can't play their game. Like I'm not trying to box in our thing, just that a game you
Yeah, well,
enjoyed
I
that you
mean,
no longer play.
it's well, I have a bit of a like there's a lot of old games like you mentioned Palladium and stuff like that we used to play a lot, and I can't imagine playing it again because we've kind of moved on or there's other systems, but I'll tell you, and I told you, I guess I had mentioned this before, but 5e, I really had a turbulent relationship with 5e at one point. Like I just really didn't like it, and the only way that I could come through it was um, that the players can use 5e, and as the GM, I don't. As odd as that sounds, and they just have an understanding that when it's my turn as a GM with my NPCs, my monsters, or what have you, they may not be doing things the same way the players do. I know that sounds unusual, but I don't. So I have a rule at my G&D table that it's just a personal rule for me. I consult no books for anything. Everything has to be made. So I will not look at a book. I will not own a book. Yeah, I played D&D long enough that everything I do is from scratch in my head. or based on my knowledge, right? And that worked. I just ran my first campaign on it. They're using 5e. I'm doing my own thing, and it worked because we're all using the same fundamental D20 philosophy.
So you mean they are free to make a 5e based character, but
That's
you
correct. That's
arbitrate
correct.
based on your general
That's correct.
understanding and preferences for the whole history of the game,
That's
and
correct. Yep. Yep.
you're allowing them to interpret things through their character sheets in a way that's consistent with their understanding, but at the same time, you're not
Correct.
telling them that the rules are going to reflect exactly what they think it should be if they read the
That,
book.
that's
Is that
correct.
right?
Yep. That's correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
fair.
it's kind of like communal wisdom or communal knowledge, I guess. But yeah, but no books allowed. Um, they can look up a book if they want in their spare time. Can't slow down the game, but I don't use the monster manual. Don't use the DMG. I'm just going on my experience. And
So
thankfully, I've
theoretically,
played long enough that I can do that. Yeah.
theoretically, you could have someone sit down with a third edition and a fourth edition and a fifth edition
Yeah.
character, and they'd still like to play in your game just fine.
You're right. Yeah.
You can
Absolutely.
handle that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the players kind of rebelled or jumped to my side. So uh, a lot of them most of them are using 5e, but one of them said, "I'm not using any books either." And they literally created their. So as they were gaining a level, they had to come up with, okay, what does my character what does that give me? Um, and it worked too. It worked. So
Yeah, that's your experience talking. So,
yeah,
and if
that's
they're
it.
having fun, that's what matters. That's awesome. You
Yeah.
know, for me, I'm thinking of Vampire the Masquerade, and I remember playing in a house that was the parents had gone away. So instead of the kids putting on a big backyard party, they put on a Vampire the Masquerade
Mm.
game for 11 days straight at a
Oh
giant
wow.
conference table, like this beautiful conference table. There were like 8 of us or something. Um, and they played all night, and there's no way to replicate that. Nobody
Wow,
has
that's
the
cool.
time.
That
Get
sounds
out of high
Yeah,
awesome.
school,
that's
Yeah.
still
that's
in
amazing.
college.
Yeah.
You can't bring that back. Just like who's going to be able to spend all night? I can't bring back that magic. Um, but Vampire itself, I always played with a little bit of dark humor, so I understood like the culture of the angst. And heck, my what my music reflects that
Mhm.
that old gothic industrial preference in music. And I used to go to the gothic industrial nightclubs in Philadelphia, stuff like that. Of course, those you find the LARPs of Vampire the Masquerade in the city then. But I would play characters like a psychiatrist who had his victims were his patients. He'd have him addicted to heroin in his basement, and he called
Oh.
himself Dr. Feelgood and walked around like dressed like Freud with a pocket watch, but would play Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood on his '80s stereo on his shoulder or whatever. It's just ridiculous.
I
Um,
like it.
you know,
Yeah.
would I play it again? No, I mean, at least more like time. But also, I'm pickier about my GMs. Like playing a game like what you were describing. I think Phzoul. I forget your real name.
Yeah.
That would be easier because then I wouldn't have to learn it. When I was invited to a Hackmaster game and I just couldn't hack it, and the reason was not because it was a bad game. I like Kenzer and Co. I actually liked Knights at the Dinner Table. It's a great comic,
Hmm.
but I started to try and learn it, and I was like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, that was the problem with Hackmaster. When Hackmaster 4e first came out, I dove right into it. When I first grabbed a player's handbook from, I think, like a Wizards of the Coast store when those things existed, it it just grabbed me. Like I love the humor and the writing, and so I got all the books and we ran a campaign and everybody got into it. But when we stopped, and I think we stopped when their 5e came out, and we weren't interested in 5e, their next edition, because it wasn't the parody. All we cared about was the parody. The rules themselves didn't matter to us. What mattered was we were making fun of all we did in the 80s and early 90s kind of thing and playing D&D. And That was, and yet our characters were serious, but the players were, and as GM, I wasn't terribly serious. Although I did on my GM screen have a picture of every character I killed beside a picture of the monster that killed them or trap, so they could see my kills would pile up, and just because of that oppositional nature for Hackmaster. But once we stepped away from it, was no stepping back to it because nobody wanted to relearn the rules and get back into that intensity of because you needed to be a rules lawyer. That was part of the comedy of the game, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But yeah, I would never get into a game like that again, but I loved it at the time. So that's another example for me of a game I don't play anymore.
It's one of those things where I can look like, well, it looks like it's really cool and awesome for those who have the time or the inclination to learn it themselves. But my head, I just can't do it.
Is your impression, Dan? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask Dan a question. Is your impression, Dan, that over the years, systems have generally become D&D is the exception, right? That's probably the most complicated system. But when it comes to, I guess, everything else, that systems have gone the way of being just easier, simpler, more quick to pick up. I'm just thinking about like Powered by the Apocalypse, Free League. Those systems are pretty. They're very popular, but they seem to be very simple.
I don't know if I'm even qualified to answer that fully.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it sounds right. That sounds right to me. I'm always looking for the black swan, like
Oh
there
yeah,
must be an exception to that rule. Like, yeah, but what about that? Like, I don't know. But yeah, I think there's been a trend for that. I'm not sure proportionally how big it is comparatively to Legendary Adventure was billed as rules light, right?
Oh, was it? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a thing even back then. That was a long time ago. D&D first edition. Some people still love that because it's rules light compared to other editions. Or like I played Amber Diceless role playing game. That's some seriously rules light stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
oh my gosh.
By and large, yeah, I think if you're gonna create something that you're trying to get some sort of mass appeal, and if it's gonna be big and complex, then it had, I suppose, better have one hell of a hook or be associated with a property that people actually expect that, and that's your target audience. Because I can't imagine putting something out that's not streamlined and rules light and easy to understand. Like I haven't read Daggerheart, for example. I know that's huge. I don't know how complicated. I don't think it's complicated. I think it's narratively driven. Um, I don't know how good of a system it is compared to others. I haven't read it, but these days, if I think I don't know what's more important. Okay, here's a good example. Now I'm gonna double back. What's that company that MC? I messed up that name. Matt Colville, his company, and Draw Steel is the name of the game, and it's all tactical. That's what the players wanted. That's what his audience wanted. That's he was a fan of fourth edition. That's more complicated. That's not as streamlined. So it may be that there's an audience for everything.
MCDM.
Thank you, MCDM. I know I was watching that. I was like, I'm not even going to try and finish that. So like if you have a dedicated audience and you have a preference for a style of play, like what is that? Shadow Dark, the OSR rules light. It's been that was pretty wildly successful, and that's because that person had a YouTube presence. Certainly wasn't the only thing of its kind. So I guess what I'm asking you is like, do you think that it's more important in terms of like we have more rules light, do we have more complex systems, do we have more like simulationist versus narrative system, or is it more a matter of these days it depends on the personalities involved and who has the
Yeah.
YouTube followings and the most popular shows or the licenses. That seems to be what really is
Yeah.
driving things these days.
I have two thoughts on it. The one is I would agree. Like if you're going to get into the business, and you're like doing a Kickstarter, you either have to be wildly popular on social media or you need to hire someone who's wildly popular to endorse it. Uh, the other is that I feel like so I don't know if I have any data to back this up, but I feel that role playing games, to some extent, with the exception of a few, is more about collecting the role playing games of your favorite YouTubers than playing them. It's about supporting the person and buying the game versus like I don't know. I just look at I'll just look at the people in my group. They must own, some of them own 100, over 100 role playing games. We'll never play them, right? But they just like certain companies or they like certain people.
Yeah, I mean, I've never actually GM'd a game of Castles and Crusades, though I've known them for 2 decades. And I could online. Part of it was just lack of time, or I was focusing on
Yeah,
Eldritch, or I wanted to play Legendary Adventure. But just like local groups, I'd be like, "Hey, I got Castle. Want to try Castles and Crusades? Now we want to play D&D." And just
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's kind of you go to the. Or I would ask Dwight this. I mean, because I know you're always posting games that you've bought. How many games do you have that you've never played?
Oh, I wouldn't even be able to count. Like I don't know it, but it would be up there, like you said. For me to have 100 games I've never played is very possible. Yeah, just
I've
role
had a lot
playing
of
games, not even
settings.
counting board games.
Guilty
You
with
still buy
settings,
them?
especially in the second
Yeah,
edition era. Like, oh, Birthright, that looks cool. I'll get that box. Planescape, I read it. I did play some, but nowhere compared to the investment I had made at the time. Uh, Forgotten Realms, never ran a game in the Forgotten Realms. I owned the box set. Same thing with Greyhawk. Same thing. Like I read them all.
yeah, yeah.
Never played in them. I would play in them, but and it's like, well, are you allocating your time? You get a family, whatever. It's like, you know what? These kids are really getting in my way of gaming. I need to kick them out. So after I threw my first couple kids down the chute for a Greyhawk game, I decided to try again. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, to some extent, I feel like the industry a bit. It's just, and not all companies, but certain it's just about the Kickstarter. Get the Kickstarter money, get the book out there, and move on. Don't care if it's sustainable, right? Don't care if anybody plays it. Don't care if I'm just going to move on to my next Kickstarter. Now, I don't feel there's a lot of people who are not like that, but I feel that there's a few, well, at least I've encountered a few, in my opinion, where it was just about Kickstarter and not about playing the game.
I think
Well,
I think it
now this is where like the Terminus RPG, I was feeling that like I don't know anymore, and I was feeling a little jaded, and I thought, well, I haven't even play tested this very much yet, and I wonder what the interest level would be. So I was like, I'll just put it out for 2 weeks and see what happens. And I kind of proved my point. Like, you don't have the following if you don't have a lot of enthusiasm behind it. If you haven't put the work in, if you don't have you're not going to get noticed at all. So maybe it
yeah,
seems that way because in order to have a successful Kickstarter in the first place, you really have to put months and months of work into getting it promoted and ramping up to it. And then if it does fail, you've just wasted. If you're supposed to raise money, right? But you've wasted a lot of time and effort.
Yeah. I don't know
And
his
after
name,
that,
but there's a YouTube channel called GM's Lair, I think, and he had a big following, but he was saying he did a whole video on Kickstarter YouTube, but he was saying like to put a project out there, like to really get out there, I think he was saying like the 100 grand is what 50 to 100 grand would be a realistic spend on marketing. If you don't have your own, if you're not, you don't have your own kind of, if you have to buy the celebrities, right, or the influencers.
well, I could imagine that giving one a gigantic edge. Certainly, if I had that kind of
Yeah,
money to wave around,
yeah.
I
Would you ever make it?
I wouldn't
Yeah,
I wouldn't disagree with him, but that would explain also why, if you have some who can invest that kind of money in the first place before even raising the money, why the competition might seem even steeper.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, certainly I've been pulled into looking at Kickstarters because they've shown up as advertisements. And I normally avoid advertisements, but for whatever reason, when I'm floating through Instagram, I will often see Kickstarters. Almost all my ads are Kickstarters for role-playing games on Instagram for whatever reason. So periodically I see one and I go, yeah, I didn't know Ghost in the Shell was putting out an RPG, so I'll have a look, So I think that advertising certainly has an impact if you've got the money.
Yeah. And nostalgia would always get me. Like when I saw Wasteland 2 or Bard's Tale 4, it's like, oh, I remember that as a kid. It's like Brian Fargo, I know that name. I'm itching for that nostalgia.
And
But if it's not a property, if it's not a license, if it's unknown and you don't have advertising power, good luck.
yeah, and to the games that people don't play, just from the Kickstarter, one of the things that I look at is their adventure support. Is there, like, if I just see them putting out a rule book, I'm much less inclined to invest in an RPG that may never have at least some sample adventures for me to look at before I run it or something like that. And I think because of Guardians of Order was a company that I bought a lot of their stuff, and one of the things that always disappointed me with them is they'd buy an intellectual property, they'd put out a game book for it, and then no support, and then they'd lose the rights for it, and it's just gone. So you have nothing. You're never going to get more support for this game. It's just gone.
Oh,
And so
one
I'm
hit
very
wonder.
hesitant with intellectual properties.
Yeah. I think Free League does a lot better than that, though, don't they? Isn't that the Swedish
Yeah,
company?
Yeah, they've been very successful. Yeah.
that's right.
Others have tried it, but I can't think can you think of any other
Modiphius has
not
done pretty well.
Aren't they a
Oh yeah, they
distributor?
did Conan and John Carter, right? Yeah.
Star Trek is Modiphius, isn't it?
Dune, yeah.
And
Yeah.
Black
Dune, yeah,
Void, which I've
right.
written for Black Void. I did a couple
Mhm,
adventures with them. I'll call that one out.
that's right.
Black Void, check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, send me any links to your music, any products you want, and I'll throw them in the description.
Yeah. If you want depressing techno industrial,
I remember looking at Black Void because of you. Yeah.
I love
Mm.
Black Void. And the author, he's great.
Well,
The creator of that game.
we should probably, what have we been going on here for 2 hours? So this is going to be our longest podcast so far. We should probably wrap it up. Or any last words you guys anything you want to plug? Any last words you guys want to talk about? Or one last question you want to ask the other two people? Dan?
Yeah, you ever let's see. Now I have ADHD, so I'm going to embody that right now. Like, I forgot what I was gonna say. So go on.
I'll come back. Zool?
Oh, I just want to say this is it's cool being on this podcast because everybody I seem to meet has somehow been in the sphere of influence of Gary Gygax. So it's like I'm like
Well,
I'm like 1 degree I'm now 1 degree removed.
and that's probably partially because those are the people I tended to befriend over the years.
Yeah, yeah,
Those,
yeah,
although I
Yeah,
have some friends that are very much Dave Arneson camp people and are a little
yeah.
anti
Oh yeah.
Gary Gygax now,
Oh,
which
okay.
I
Yeah,
don't know if you've
yeah,
met some of them, but I'll get them on here sometime.
yeah.
I'd
It'd be
hang with an
cool to go.
Arneson fan.
Yeah,
Well,
it'd be
You should
cool
get
to
Arneson
go
John
here.
back.
Crayfield. Get John Crayfield onto the show.
I would love to get John. I do not know if I even I'd have to
I
see if
can.
my old email address works for him or anything.
You
I
don't have
haven't
to. I
talked.
talk to him.
Do you?
I'll get him. Oh, yeah. I'm
Get
good friends with John.
get John. I haven't talked to him since like 2010. Like it's been a long time. Like once the Gygax Games thing fell through, we talked for a while after that, and I think his son was into music and he was sending me his son's stuff or something for a while, and then I guess I kind of failed at that friendship. I kind of fell in the background, but I love John. John's awesome. Yeah, so if you can get me
Yeah.
back in touch with him and get if he'd come out, I would love to have him.
Yeah.
Be a great resource for Legendary Adventure as well.
Oh, and I wanted to say, your way of running, without books is ultimately the way Gary would do it anyway.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's cool. That's
You
flattering.
know,
Thank you.
you wouldn't want to question him on the rules because he's not. I don't think he bothered to open it either. It's like I wrote the goddamn thing. I'm gonna run it the way
That's
I
right.
That
makes
makes
sense.
sense from everything I know too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say as kind of my last parting thought, and which something we can maybe discuss in a future episode, is I have a fondness for games where the players don't need to know any rules. And I like to see players just have a character and role play their character. And as a GM, I know all the rules and we just go, and maybe I wing it, maybe I don't. But as long as it seems the verisimilitude stays strong and that everything seems realistic within the parameters of our campaign, adventure, one shot, then I think that's a success. But I like them not knowing the rules.
If you trust your
Hackmaster
GM,
4E aside. Sorry.
just trust the GM. If you're all
Yeah.
having fun.
Yeah. Isn't that yeah, that's kind of like, what's it called? Free Kriegspiel Revolution or something? You're just, FKR, you're just rolling, whenever you say you're going to do something, the GM just says, hey, roll a die. And we'll
Yeah.
just interpret it. Yeah.
We'll
Some,
put that on the agenda for next session. Free. That's a whole conversation. Free Kriegspiel Revolution. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'll do a little research. I have researched it before, and I'll bring that up next week.
I enjoyed the conversation, so if you want, I'll talk to John. You can bring me back, and I'll meander around with words more.
All right. Well, we'll do our closeout. I think that we've done more than we've ever done before. It was great having you, Dan. Really honored to have you come back and have a chat with you kind of more officially. We've certainly chatted unofficially. And
For years.
Phzoul, as always, it's a great pleasure. I am Kurse. See everybody later.
Yeah.
That was the show. You heard it here. Come back next time for another wild frontier. Adventure in our mind. And remember to